Friday forecast, Gopher style. Minnesota Golden Gophers hosting Nebraska. Getting ready for the forecast. You think it's going to be summer. I'm already in the mood for winter weather.
I'm going Brady Hoke right now.
Yeah, you are Brady Hoke, and I'm dressed accordingly here. Let's talk about the weather here. It's going to be cold and possibly snowy conditions in the Twin Cities this weekend.
Yeah, and I think as Nebraska gets ready for this game, you've got to take that into account. And I'm sure Scott Frost is putting that game plan sheet, that game call sheet together going into Saturday. You have to look at that and say, all right, what's the wind going to be like? Is it going to be snowing? Is it going to be raining? And, they have experience doing this, Andy. I think a year ago they played obviously in the really cold game against Illinois. But then the Michigan State game, the wind was such a problem. They had to alter everything that they did on offense. So I'll be curious come kickoff Saturday night what it's going to be like in Minneapolis.
Scott Frost doesn't talk about injuries, but you got to believe, at least the feeling is that Adrian Martinez will sit this one out.
Yeah, you look at the situation right now, and it just sets up, in my opinion, for Noah Vedral to get this opportunity, because if Adrian is rested on Saturday, that would give him 3 full weeks of rest between game to game, which, whatever he's battling, could that be enough time to get him 100%? So, yeah, I think this, if you were to draw it up, this is a game where you're going to have to get a guy like Noah Vedral ready.
And don't be surprised if you see number 7 as well, right?
Yeah, Luke McCaffrey, has played in one, and then he got his one play, came in when a helmet came off of Noah Vedral. But to me, he can bring something in the running game as well. So it wouldn't surprise me if they said, you know what, we're going to bring him in as kind of a wildcat guy, just another option as a runner to go with Vedral, just to give us a wrinkle, because you're going to have to find rushing yards in a game like this, especially if weather is an issue.
J.D. Spielman also a question mark, but Wan'Dale Robinson we know will be there, and he is the reigning Big Ten Freshman of the Week. This guy has been lights out since getting a bigger role.
He's the reigning MVP right now of this football team through 6 games. I mean, without Wan'Dale Robinson, where's this offense right now? I mean, he is the guy that has given them life. He won them the Illinois game. He won them the Northwestern game. Think about that. If they don't have Wan'Dale Robinson, this season has a totally different feel. So I think you go into this week knowing like we've got to dial up a lot more things to Wan'Dale, because if we're going to win at 5-0 Minnesota, Wan'Dale Robinson is going to play a big part of it.
How about the snapping situation? Cam Jurgens still struggling a little bit there.
Yeah, it's a mental thing, and it's a repetition thing, and you hope it gets better with time, but there continues to be just little portions of every game where a snap or two throws off the play, and I don't know how he's working on it or what he's doing, but you hope he gets that thing addressed.
You may think what you want about P.J. Fleck, but he's rowing the boat in the right direction. A perfect start to the season for the Gophers, albeit with some close calls.
No, you look at their schedule, and I talked to a lot of writers there in the offseason, and a lot of them thought 5-0 was a real possibility when you look at how favorable their schedule was. They had to go to Fresno State. South Dakota State's always a tough game just because there's a lot of kids on that SDSU roster that probably the Gophers didn't recruit, so they were upset about that. But, then Illinois, and, you look at how the games they played Purdue with their guys both going down with injury. So I think they've had the greatest schedule draw of maybe any Power 5 team in the country through the first 5 weeks. They're 5-0. And by the way, their crossovers, 2 of them are Maryland and Rutgers.
Yeah, right.
I mean, they have got by far the best schedule of any team in the conference right now, and they've taken advantage of it.
Yeah, after Nebraska, they go at Rutgers, Maryland, Penn State, at Iowa, at Northwestern, and then home against Wisconsin. So their offense, though, they've got some weapons. Tanner Morgan set a record for the Big Ten in terms of completion percentage. Did 21 of 22 a couple weeks ago against Purdue. Threw for 4 touchdowns. A couple running backs they've got in Brooks and Smith. And I'll tell you, they perhaps have the best wide receiver contingent in the Big Ten.
Yeah, Andre Johnson leads that group at receiver for Minnesota. And then after Johnson, they've got 2 other guys. I mean, they have 3 guys that are NFL caliber receivers: Shannon Brooks, Roddy Smith, Ibrahim. I mean, those are 3 high quality running backs as well. And then big tight ends. And Nebraska talked about that on Monday, how they really try to utilize those tight ends to create matchup issues and dominate the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, you mentioned Tyler Johnson has 28 catches for 350 and 5 touchdowns. And Rashard Bateman has 23 catches, 537 and 4. What's this game going to come down to when it all boils down to kickoff on Saturday night?
I think it's going to come down to Nebraska if they can run the ball effectively, and they need the run to set up the pass. If they're struggling to run the football, this is going to be a long night in Minneapolis. So without Adrian Martinez potentially, how do you doctor up a running game to move the ball at a pace to win this game. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Defensively, I think Nebraska, those receivers not letting them win a lot of the 50-50 balls, because a year ago they did win a lot of 50-50 balls, Johnson particularly, but they've seen these guys. A lot of players on Nebraska's defense have played against Brooks and Smith and Johnson and all these other guys on this offense, so at least they know, they're very familiar with the opponent.
Well, I know one thing is for certain, it's going to be cold, so if you're going up to Minneapolis, bring your parka. Make sure you pack your parka. It's Nebraska and Minnesota Saturday night at 6:30 in the Twin Cities.